One of the arguments in favor of the viability of the Christian belief system is found in Christianity's ability to provide objective moral principles for living well in the world. The Christian ethical foundation in God establishes a platform on which the structure of objective moral right and wrong can be explained. This is important because not every worldview provides this foundation. In fact, let me just pick on philosophical naturalism for a moment. Now, philosophical naturalism claims that humans are nothing more than a collection of atoms that formed by chance in a blind, unthinking, meaningless universe. Now, if that's true, then philosophical naturalism is forced to reduce human morality to social constructs effectuated for the sole purpose of managing instinct. For example, philosopher Bertrand Russell defined the human condition under naturalism in this way. He said, "Man is the product of causes which had no provision of the end they were achieving. His origin, his growth, his hopes and fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocation of atoms." Now, if we accept the naturalist story of human origins and human nature, and if there is no higher authority concerning moral truth than individual or group opinion, then morality is subjective. That is, it has no mind-external grounding in reality. If the naturalist story is true, and all that exists in the universe is matter and energy regulated by natural laws, then good and evil, right and wrong, love and hatred, these are all illusory concepts. And these are mere fabrications of our imagination with no basis in reality. Now remember that for the naturalist, if you can't see it, taste it, touch it, experiment on it, and so forth, it doesn't exist. But the problem with this thinking is that material objects do not possess the property of being good or evil. There aren't good and evil plants, good and evil mountains, good and evil clouds. There aren't good and evil atoms or molecules. In fact, outspoken atheist biologist Richard Dawkins in his book River Out of Eden said that the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. So philosophical naturalism, as defined by philosophical naturalists themselves, simply doesn't provide us with categories for speaking about right and wrong. So the short of it is that a morally neutral universe should produce morally neutral people. Objective morality cannot simply be conjured out of thin air. And yet we have an innate sense of justice, right? A sense of goodness and longing to love and to be loved. Why is this? I'm persuaded that it's because there is a just, good, and loving God at the origin of human morality. The Christian ethic is not a social construct, but a truth that is embedded in us by our Creator and taught to us by our Savior. The fact is, Christianity does a better job explaining morality, providing a livable ethic for human beings. Of course, some will likely object that Christians aren't necessarily better people than anyone else. In fact, the fact is, to take a step further, we could point out all the wrongs that have been committed by Christians. So if Christians are so contemptible at times, why should we accept Christianity over philosophical naturalism or really anything else? Well, really there are two ways I would want to respond to that. First, the appearance of hypocrisy within a worldview doesn't negate the truth of that worldview. It might make that worldview a bit unsavory in some important ways, but it doesn't make it false, okay? For example, if your dietitian offers you a well-tested nutritional plan to help improve your health, but that same dietitian is in terrible health and isn't following their own advice, it would be normal for us to find the whole project a bit suspect, right? Inconsistencies between belief and practice are naturally insalubrious. It leaves a bad taste, it's a bad look. But just because our dietitian fails to follow his own advice, that doesn't mean the advice is bad. And in the same way, understand that the ethic of Christianity needs to be assessed on its own merit, not on the basis of the failing of Christians, okay? So the second thing is, Christians are not perfect. Most Christians are far from perfect. Let's just be honest. We struggle with the same shortcomings, the same failures, brokenness, sin as the rest of the world. Christians are simply people who recognize the need to submit those failures and those sins to God's healing care. Christians are simply people who recognize their imperfections and their need for God's grace in their lives. Really, in essence, Christians are people who acknowledge there's something truly and objectively broken inside of us that only God can truly and objectively repair by the power of the cross and by the resurrection of Jesus Christ.